Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Nonprofit Learning Lab for today's workshop. If you have any questions along the way for our presenter, you can type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, likely on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have any tech questions, you can also type them there. If you are interested in using live captions for today's workshop, you can use the link we will send in the chat shortly. If you are interested in receiving the recordings and materials from today's free webinar, you can visit our free webinars page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can send us an email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, William.
Thanks, Tammy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Cultivate and Manage Donor Relationships Remotely. My name is Bill Myatt, and I am the founding owner of a boutique consulting firm called Major Gift Solutions. Very excited to speak with you today about this topic. I think it's quite timely and gives us actually a number of opportunities as we respond to really what I would call a sea change in fundraising. Here's the agenda that we're going to look at today. You can see that after we get through some introductions, I'll introduce myself and my firm. We'll talk just a brief bit about the sea change that I do see in fundraising overall. And then we'll get into the heart of the presentation, which really revolves around a number of strategies that Major Gift Solutions uses consistently as we serve our clients. And if you know anything about me, you might see some repeats here, because this is how we do manage the overall life cycle of fundraising as it relates to major gifts, but then can really be extended to relate to your overall fundraising strategy in general. We'll offer some concluding thoughts there as well as we finish up. So who am I? Let me tell you just a bit about myself. Of all things, I am a theologian turned fundraiser back in my 20s, which seems like more than a lifetime ago. I was a pastor. I attended seminary. I did the whole thing. I did a PhD in theology, taught for a while, and then moved into fundraising a little over a dozen years ago. My background is in nonprofit work overall, in faith-based settings, and I found that this combination of essentially a kind of pragmatism in growth in the fundraising side, combined with a humanities-based and kind of hope-filled based approach in this faith-based background, has really allowed me to succeed in fundraising, giving people the opportunity to connect to something bigger than themselves, helping them see a sense of hope on the horizon, have a kind of collective identity, and it has given me the chance to have some success as I lay out here in these bullet points. I think one of my more proud moments was when I was able to close $1 million gift back right in the kind of middle of the pandemic via 3 Zoom meetings with a previous board member at a nonprofit I was serving that had just a $2.2 million annual budget. And so you can put the dots together there and see that that would have obviously been an important part of their fundraising overall that year. And again, that was remote. So who is Major Gift Solutions? What are we? Well, there are 3 of us total. And I think Amanda and David may be here. If you're here, guys, hi, nice to see you. Tell you a bit about who we are. We are fully remote. Major Gift Solutions has been around since 2020. I started off doing consulting work on the side as I was working full-time as a fundraiser, and we have just grown. I went full-time into Major Gift Solutions just, I think maybe 2+ years ago now, and we added David about a year ago, close to that, and then Amanda just this year, and they are helping in various ways with what we do. David is located in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and Amanda is located in Austin, Texas. And you can see here that we essentially provide a kind of full range of fundraising services that really run the gamut. Our clients, and I'm hoping that we have people maybe on both ends of the spectrum here today, represent nonprofits that have a budget as small as maybe just a few $100,000 a year, and as much as really into the millions. So that's been fun to see how we've been able to serve clients really along the spectrum there. And we provide a variety of services here that might be contractual in the sense that we're doing just maybe a few weeks for you, maybe a few months, doing some kind of feasibility study, something like that. Or we have a number of client relationships that have gone on for several months, in fact, a number of years for a few of our clients, and those have been really very rewarding to see. In fact, if you could allow me just to brag a bit on what we've been able to do, not only is Major Gift Solutions itself a remote fundraising boutique, we have clients located across the United States. I'm located in Chicago, as I have been for, wow, I guess 15 plus years now, maybe I think 20, I can't even remember. But here we are in Chicago. Our clients are in places like Boston, Memphis, Los Angeles, and we have had a client in Washington, D.C. Again, our employees are remote. We have demonstrable fundraising success. And let me just talk about one of those here. We have a client that is also a fully remote organization. This is a 501c3 with an annual budget. You can see had been, when we started, just barely over $100,000. They had a number of staff members who were working for just salaries that were barely just, I will say. And since we've been working with them, we have seen our fundraising almost triple there, as you can see, and we've helped in a variety of ways. So this is just an example. This is literally kind of screenshot pulled from a recent report that we did for them, where the individual donors that give to their organization has itself more than doubled, about 2.5 times, and the total number of transactions that they have going through their Bloomerang CRM is well into the 1600s there, and you can see the growth there. So that is an example of a fully remote organization served by a fully remote fundraising team, and we were able to see some success. In addition to that, recently, just this year, working fully remote, this is for a Chicago client, I will say, but we've helped raise $750,000 for them, kind of facilitating work for a gala over the last few months. We raised $75,000 just this last month for a client that had a $300,000 annual budget. A client of ours recently closed a $1 million gift. We were tangentially involved in that, but that was a big win. And you can see a couple of other examples here. We were really fortunate to help organize an $82,000 emergency campaign for a small nonprofit that was here in Chicago, but done fully remotely. And then recently closed just the other day via Zoom in a donor meeting with the executive director and myself. We closed just under a $20,000 gift for a nonprofit with likewise a kind of small budget. So you can see the types of clients we help and the manner in which we have been able to see some pretty good success. So I want you to begin here. This is this first point in the agenda of kind of just reflecting on this sea change in major gift fundraising. I want you to think about this. And here is the question that I have for you. How has major gift fundraising changed since I just put it here, the spring of 2020, and of course that would be right in the beginning of the pandemic, when we all had to work from home and nobody knew what was going on or what was going to happen. There was really a sea change overall, globally, in the way we all interacted with all of our different aspects of our experiences. And of course, that impacted fundraising. I happened to be kind of AVP level at a mid-sized nonprofit at that time. And I recall, especially as I was doing gift officer work before that, before we started working remotely, we were in an office. You had a centralized fundraising team. You managed your portfolio as a gift officer from your office. I was on the phone. I was on the office phone, you know, with the cord into the wall and calling donors from that phone. I was using the phone and email and letters to invite donors to lunch or coffee. It was kind of rare that especially a major gift ask would not occur in person. The metrics of measuring our activity was really in-person visits. There were strategies based on where a donor lived, and there were a lot of hours that you would put into traveling to get to those in-person visits. Whereas now, as opposed to working in an office, we're all working from home, maybe hybrid. One of our clients, in fact, is in the real estate area, and a lot of those folks in real estate are they're feeling this change where offices, of course, no longer have the quantity of workers there. There's a decentralized fundraising team as opposed to a centralized team. You're managing your portfolio from home. You're making your calls from a cell. You're inviting donors to Zoom meetings. Gift officer metrics, I think, have increased, and we'll get into that in a minute. You're looking at Zoom visits as opposed to in-person visits, and you can see some more of the ways that we've changed here. Let me just continue to reflect on this just a bit by showing that before, really, it would have been rare in 2019 for me to ask dear Sally, who was an 80-something donor to maybe a university where I worked. It would have been rare for Sally to know how to get onto Zoom and meet with me for 30 minutes in her living room. Nowadays, that's quite normal. I won't say it's quite universal, because I will be honest and say just recently a donor responded to my invitation to a Zoom meeting and said she couldn't quite figure it out. So there are those things that happen. But I will say that almost universally, for really most segments, joining a gift officer or a fundraiser or an executive director for a Zoom meeting, that is a quite normal occurrence. As opposed to 10 visits a month, gift officer expectation, I think now, and you have to forgive me for being just a bit ambitious here, we can expect our gift officers, our fundraisers, to be having at the very least many more visits per month. I put 20 here, that might be, again, ambitious, but we can have many more strategic conversations each day. Instead of spending multiple days traveling for a single donor meeting, you can have multiple meetings with donors across the world, literally, in a single day. So those are all ways in which things have changed. Just to summarize here, I think like all other professional sectors, fundraising has been changed by these societal shifts that were initiated by the pandemic. It is vital for us as fundraisers not only to keep up with these changes, but I think to lean into them. By leaning into the possibilities opened up by remote fundraising, without losing the sensitivities of authentic relationship building, we can raise more money, cultivate more relationships, and ultimately drive the missions of our organizations in more fundamental ways. That was a mouthful. I hope you will go back and think about that. Let me just repeat. I think that there are many possibilities opened up by remote fundraising, as long as we hold on to the sensitivities that I hope we all have of authentic relationship building. And let me just take a minute to kind of remember some of my theology and philosophy days and reflect on this importance of authentic relationship building. One of my favorite philosophers happened to be a Jewish Lithuanian-born philosopher named Emanuel Levinas. And Levinas, just to sort of really simplify his philosophy, did his metaphysics through the experience of the other. What I mean by that is Levinas tried to navigate truth, meaning a universal kind of experience of all people, by reflecting on the face. There is something about being in the presence of another person. There's something about seeing a person's face that makes a claim on us that is as old, frankly, as the 10 Commandments, Levinas would say, thou shalt not kill. You see someone else's face, you don't want to do harm to them. That's kind of the most basic fundamental level of this intensity of the power of the face. As fundraisers, we have to tap into that. And as we talk about our mission of our organization to our donors, we need to remind the donors of the face of the person they are supporting. And I also think that it is very important to lean into the power of the face, even as we are working remotely, as we are interacting remotely with our donors, usually via Zoom, over the phone, if you will, but kind of helping them have that experience of the interpersonal. That, I think, will allow us to continue tapping into the possibilities and opening up new horizons for the nonprofits that we serve. So I want to now, as we move into kind of the nuts and bolts of what remote fundraising would look like, just to remind everyone, the assumptions are might be different, but the strategy overall is really the same. I recall from the very first fundraising class I took, however many years ago, that this slide here represents the life cycle, if you will, of the major gift donor. You're starting with qualification. Are they qualified? Do they have the capacity of a donor? Then you're moving into cultivation, you're moving into your ask and solicitation, then you're moving into stewardship to enter them back into this life cycle. That is essentially the same. In fact, I would say that as we are doing that, we then would move into these more specific steps about how to overall allow that life cycle to continue. And this is what we're going to get into here in the second half of our presentation today, as we're looking at these 4 steps of really helping donors work through those different points in the life cycle. So step 1, I'm going to encourage you to meet the donors you already have. To do that, I'm going to encourage you to cast a wide net. You're then going to initiate an email drip campaign, some new thoughts here that I will present to some of you. And then you're going to facilitate a successful donor meeting. Now, we don't have time to really get too much into stewardship, but of course you want to make sure that's there as well. And really kind of, I think coloring all of this needs to be that reminder about Emmanuel Levinas, the face, the interpersonal, as we are leaning into the possibilities of remote fundraising so we can cultivate our donors remotely. Well, how do we do that? I think if you want to land major gifts, it is vital that you find the right donors. In fact, I have kind of bet my consulting firm on this notion that once you find the right donors, the rest is not going to be too complicated. Finding the right donors, simply giving them initial steps to guide their relationship to increase their giving, that will help drive the mission of your organization and will allow you to see growth in your fundraising results. When you're looking for those donors, this might be review for some of you, you're looking essentially for these 3 qualities. Number 1, you're evaluating the wealth of your donors. A major gift donor will have enough wealth, they will have the capacity to support your organization at a higher level. But you're not simply looking for the donors who can support your organization at a higher level. I've met the donors who have plenty of money to give. They're not necessarily the donors who will help advance your mission. So in addition to that wealth, they need to have generosity and they need to have some affinity with your organization. In fact, I will tell you that the single most determining factor for a future major gift donor is a previous major gift donor. As you're thinking about finding those donors who might be able really to help catapult your organization to the next level, be looking first at those who have already supported you. And when you do that, you're going to find the ones who at the very least are going to have legs 2 and 3 here of affinity and generosity, and you will continue to qualify those who would have wealth. So as you're doing that, you're going to look at the history of cash giving. You're going to pull from your CRM. You're going to do maybe a full data pull. This is one of the things that we do with our clients. And we're looking at some of these pointers like single biggest gift. What's their most recent gift? What's total giving, and what has been their annual giving over the last 5 years. As you're looking at some of those things, these are maybe those objective scientific signs you can look at to help you understand the donors that you already have. In fact, I would tell you, before you spend time worrying about finding new donors, make sure you do get to know the donors who already support you. This is in and of itself a kind of stewardship moment. Even if those donors give at a lower level, I encourage you to get to know them, have the phone calls, have the Zoom meetings. You will learn about the people who support your organization. You'll learn why they give, how they see your organization, and how you may need to improve your organization. Are there things that you can do to improve your communication, your overall mission, that type of thing? The single most important thing you can do to raise major gifts remotely is to hold intentional, focused, regular conversations with the donors who already support you. That would be step number 1 in remote fundraising. Get to know the donors who are already there. In fact, I would say, if we could have a moment for you to reflect on how you spend your week, are you having conversations with those donors? And if you are not, if you don't know those who support your organization, it might be time to reevaluate your fundraising strategy. Now, you say to me, Bill, you're telling me that as opposed to 10 visits a month, I now need to have maybe 20. I need to have more than I used to. How am I going to do that? Step number one, we say this nearly every day with our clients, you need to cast a wide net. If you want to have those visits that will help drive your knowledge of your donors and ultimately drive revenue for your organization, you need to cast a wide net. You need to invite more people to conversations than you think you need to invite. That's kind of the bottom line. Think about what you think you need to invite and increase that. In fact, maybe you need not only to double it, but multiply it by here, you see, maybe times 10. In my experience, it requires 10 invitations to a visit to get one visit. And it might require 10 visits to get one gift. So if you kind of multiply that out, you're looking at the fact that to close one major gift, it's possible you're going to need to have, or you're going to need to send 100 invitations to a visit. If you want to close 50 major gifts, you're going to have to invite 500 people to a visit. And so you can kind of see this here. This is actually a graphic we created for one of our clients in a recent feasibility study we did. As they were looking to close major gifts, we encouraged them, don't only look at those who you would think would be in your major gift portfolio. Take advantage of this opportunity to be remote, have 20 to 30-minute Zoom meetings with people, and really look at not only those major gift people, but everyone who was in contact with your organization. So this particular client, they had 7,500 people on their newsletter list. Our encouragement was to think about all 7,500 recipients of that newsletter as potential major gift donors, and also as individuals that they could invite to a conversation. So how are you going to do that? Well, again, leaning into some of these changes that have occurred post-pandemic, working remotely, we will manage for our clients an email drip campaign or a cold contact, cold email campaign. We've done this collectively between Amanda, David, and myself. We've facilitated well over 100 of these. We've utilized a drip campaign system to warm up cold leads for multiple clients. And we really see that using this drip email campaign is our most common way to invite donors to visits and to schedule those visits. And what I mean by this is you're looking at, say, for example, those people who receive your newsletter, 7,500 people. They may have never had a one-on-one conversation with you, but you're never going to know how much they might support your organization unless you meet with them. So send them an email. Ask them for that 20-minute Zoom meeting. And remember, kind of think about your own experience of perhaps receiving some email from a nonprofit representative. It's not super likely that you're going to respond to the first. So tell yourself as a fundraiser, I'm probably going to have to ask this person, this single person out of the 100 I'm inviting to a visit, I might have to ask that single person 3 times just to get them to say yes to the invitation. So for example, a sample timeline for us is that initial email. Day 3, we do a follow-up. Day 8, we'll do a final. And then as you continue, you'll get into the need for phone calls, and you might have some really good donor visits over the calls. This presentation is being recorded. The slides will be downloadable. So I'll just direct your attention to some samples of the emails that we will use. You'll see that we do invite our donors to a 30-minute Zoom meeting right here in the email. A few days later, we'll follow it up, just kind of a gentle reminder. Then we follow it up again 8 days later. And what we see is that the open rates and the response rates as we move through this 3 email cycle do increase over those periods of the email invitations, up to the point of having sometimes 60–70% open rate through the third-party vendors that we use. In fact, we suggest, as you send out these invitations, set aside blocks of time each week. Maybe say 3–4 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, when you as the fundraiser can partner up with the executive director to meet with donors during that particular time frame. You send out your emails, you say, the executive director and I are available every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock. Will you join us, dear donor, for that visit? And I'll just say here, I've dropped in some examples of third-party vendors. Now, this is kind of technical, and I do not actually encourage face-to-face fundraisers to spend too much time thinking through these different vendors. You can use your time much better simply by sending those emails, picking up the phone, having the conversations. But you can look at the presentation if you want to see some of those vendors that Major Gift Solutions uses, as we are trying to really multiply the number of invitations that we send out. But the thing that you will just want to take home with you here today is to remember that the single most important activity you can do to cultivate and deepen relationships with major donors remotely is to engage them in one-on-one conversations. And the way that you do that is to hold visits with them. Well, finally then, how do you hold a successful donor visit? I'll go quickly through this and you can take a look at it later at your leisure. I see the best donor visits essentially having 4 moments or 4 events that occur during that visit. You're first going to make sure you listen. You're going to learn from the donor. You're going to engage them in your mission. And you are going to take a risk of making an ask. As you're listening, your goal should be to help the donor feel like they are a part of your organization. Ask them to talk about their connection to the organization. What memories do they have of the organization? Why do they support it? You're then going to spend some time learning. And here, this is hearkening back to some of my early days studying major gift fundraising. And these are some of the most important questions that you can ask yourself. Now, you don't necessarily want to come right out and ask the donor all of these things here, but they would be ways in which you can find out the capacity of a donor and perhaps their connection to your organization. You're going to think about if they give elsewhere, have they worked with a gift officer at a different organization? Do they have other philanthropic interests? What are those? What time of year do they give? And then here, getting into some more technical things as you're looking at more traditional major gift prospects. If they're a part of a family foundation, then of course that is something that you would especially want to explore with them. So those are all parts of that learning. As we move into step 3, you're going to engage your donor by sharing stories of impact for your organization. Again, you see this theme of the face. If you have the capacity to do this, come with a real brief slideshow, a brief PowerPoint presentation. Show some of the people, maybe some of the recipients of your organization's programs, not necessarily people, maybe they're animals, maybe it's climate that you're serving, something like that, but make sure you are representing in a tangible way the mission of your organization. And then of course you're going to get into the ask. And here I would encourage you to take a look, if you want to, at majorgiftsolutions.com. There was a previous presentation I made here through the Nonprofit Learning Lab where we went into a lot more detail on this. You will simply want to tell yourself as the fundraiser that it is your responsibility to engage your donor in a conversation about their giving. It doesn't have to be an ask necessarily, but your main job is to raise money, and you should see your donors in that light. Let me just clarify here. Your job is to raise money, not ask for it. There's a difference, and I want to just say this because I've heard so many executive directors, even fundraisers, say they just don't like asking people for money. Remove that from your understanding of your job. Your job is not an asker for money. Your job is a raiser of money, and there's a difference. I want you to think about that, but I want you to remember that it is indeed your job. It is your responsibility to raise money. You can start by asking permission simply to discuss their philanthropy. If you have built that relationship, donors will rarely decline your invitation. And then you can experiment with both direct and indirect asking strategies. This is kind of the difference, if you will, between maybe the East Coast strategy and the Midwest nice strategy. And I've laid out a few of these and some of the other resources that are available on the Major Gift Solutions website. So I encourage you to take a look there. Well, this is the end of the presentation. We flew through a lot there towards the end. I do encourage you to take a look back at some of the things that we said. Reach out to us. Take this final slide here as an encouragement. You can do it. There was someone at your organization who looked at you and said, this person is who we need to help fill this role for us at this time. Someone believed in you, and you know what? I do too. I think we all have the ability to build those relationships, to raise money for our organizations, and thereby to advance our missions. And that's a wonderful, if I might use this word, that's a wonderful calling. And I do encourage you to lean into that. Reach out to us. You can find me on Gmail. You can find us on all the different socials here. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn especially. And I would love to hear from any of you at any time. Thanks so much. Tammy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Bill. It looks like we have time for one question. So our question is, we have historically been supported by foundations and government contracts. We are just starting a donor program. If we don't have historical donors, how do you recommend finding them? We are exploring board member network and similar mission nonprofits.
Excellent question. Yes. So, that would go back to some of those thoughts I had earlier, and I used the metaphor of casting a wide net. And what I would just encourage you to make sure you are being honest about is the names and contact information of anyone that your organization communicates with. 3 out of 4 times for us as a consulting firm, we get this question from our clients, and a question from us to them would be, do you have a newsletter list? Usually that answer is yes. That's where in that previous slide, if you recall, we got up to the number of 7,500 recipients of this newsletter. Out of 7,500 newsletter recipients, there's got to be a couple dozen major gift prospects. So look at those people. They're the ones who do have the affinity to your organization. Maybe they've already given, maybe not quite yet, but that's your job to kind of explore. After that type of thing, and I've got a couple blog posts on this as well, you want to just think through all of the places where someone on your team might have a list buried somewhere of people they have engaged in the past, a committee. Was there another board at some point? Was there a certain list of recipients of a certain newsletter that came from a certain department? And so I encourage you just really to kind of dig through your own records first. Then you can do the more organic process, which is longer and more involved, of trying to build and lean into the networks of relationships that maybe your board has. So anyway, I encourage you to think through that, look back at some of the resources that we have at majorgiftsolutions.com, and I think you probably have a few more people who would want to support your organization already in your database, already in your contact list. You probably have more than you think you do.
Thank you. It looks like that's all we have time for.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, everybody. It's so nice to have you here. We had such a great showing today. Again, please reach out. We'd love to get to know you and serve you in any way that we can.
Thank you, Bill. This workshop has come to a close. If you are interested in receiving the recording and materials from today's free webinar, you can visit our free webinars page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can send us an email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. Thank you so much for participating. And again, thank you, Bill, for educating our community.